Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This is Christine Patterson, and welcome to FieldPartner. If this is your first time joining us for these interviews and you want to hear the rest of the ones that we've recorded, then please go to www.fieldpartner.org and click on the resources button. And you will find the other interviews and a whole lot of other content, which I hope you will enjoy. So today, I'm really pleased to be able to share another lovely story with Reuben Inwe, who is from Nigeria. He has been sent as a missionary from Nigeria to the UK. And we're really pleased to be able to hear his story. Ross and I met him last year when Ross was asked by Reuben to Zoom in from Taiwan to share with them with his fellowship. And we heard back from Reuben some of his story too, and that's why I want to share it with you. So, Reuben, thank you so much. Thank you for being willing to do this with me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we always start these interviews with a question about origins. Where are you from originally? How did you come to faith? And where did you meet your wife?
Okay. Yes, I'm originally from the Delta in Nigeria. My state is Delta State, but I was born in Lagos, in Nigeria. I went to primary, secondary school, university. I did all my professional training in Lagos, and that was almost 51 years ago. I was born 51 years ago in July. This July will be 51. And yes, I had a very lovely childhood. I was brought up by both my parents, and my parents were not regular church goers, but then they encouraged us to go to church every Sunday. It's got a strange one, but they did. Every Sunday we have to go to church. I met my wife while at the university. I was a year ahead of her. And fortunately, she came to study in my department. And at the time she came to study at my department, I was the president of the departmental association. So we're supposed to welcome new students. And she came in, and I saw her filling the information form. And she stood facing the table, and I was behind. And there and then, I felt the Spirit of God say to me, "That's your wife."
Wow.
And I went straight to her. I tapped her on the shoulder, and she looked at me and I said, "Hello?" And she said, "Hello." And I said, "Do you know you're going to be my wife?"
Reuben!
Yes. That was exactly what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was her response?
She looked at me very, very disgusted by what I said. Eyes away and walked off. So first impression wasn't very good. 2 years into our course, I was already in my final year. By then, ourselves and some of our friends will always gather around the lecture room to study. And I used to provide extra lessons for them. So she got to know me a little bit more. She got to know that I was a Christian and all those kind of things. And I remember one day again, I told her, I said, "I said to you the first day I met you that you're going to be my wife. And you were not happy about that. I'm very sorry, but then I have to say what the Lord told me, you know." And she told me there the second time that it can never happen. It can never happen. I should just zero my mind away from that will happen. That she's not interested. I said, "Okay, that's fine, no problem." And I left her, but I was convinced she was going to come around. So it took another 2 or 3, I think 3 years later, she said yes to me.
Wow.
And yeah, the rest is history, like they say.
That's really cool. What a lovely story. I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
so have you been married now?
We've been married for 20 years, since 2001, December. So last year was our 20th wedding anniversary.
Oh.
Yeah. but we've known each other for probably 30 years, to be honest.
Wow. So did you always intend to do missionary work, or were you trained for other work?
No, missionary work was outside. In fact, it was nothing. I didn't ever dream about missionary work. My dream was to become, first of all, the youngest CEO of a bank in my country. And then second of all, the youngest president of my country. That was my dream since I was 9.
Wow.
I almost got to I've always achieved the first dream before I was called into full-time ministry. So I worked in investment banking. I was trained as an accountant. So I had my degrees in accountancy. I have my professional certifications in accountancy. And I worked for about 8 years in investment banking before coming into full-time ministry. Missions wasn't part of it at all.
Obviously, God had to work on you as much as your wife.
Yeah.
So how
did
that come about?
Well, what happened to me was that when I became a Christian, my experience of salvation was very dramatic. I was traveling in a public bus in my city, and the public buses, they're very popular. Everything happens in the public bus. People sell stuff in the public bus. You have preachers on the public bus. You discuss politics in the public bus. You do everything in the public bus. So if you're traveling long distances, like I do, from where I lived to school, the public bus is a very interesting part of your day. So I was in this public bus once, and a boy about 12 years old stood up with a Bible in his hands and screamed on top of his voice, "Ah!" So the minute he opened his mouth, it was obvious to everybody that this boy had speech impediment. So he was audible, but nobody could understand what he was saying. But because he had the Bible in his hands, and you can just about catch what he's trying to say that he couldn't say. So the first thing he said when he waved his Bible was, "Let somebody shout hallelujah." That was what he said. And from then on, he just started to mumble. "Ah, ah." And somehow we all knew he was talking about Jesus. We all knew. And the level of conviction of sin in the bus was palpable. People started crying. People started sobbing profusely. People started kneeling down, confessing their sins and just praying. And this boy was still screaming, and he was still preaching, and he was still doing all of that. That was my first encounter with the living God. And from that day, I said to myself, if this boy, with all his disadvantages, could do what he's doing, I will do more. I said, God, if you could use this boy, such a young boy with all these impediments, please use me any way you want to. Right. So that was how this journey started.
Okay.
But I come from quite a large family, and where I come from, when you get to a certain level in your life, you look after everybody else. If God elevates you first, you take advantage of that to look after everybody else and help them also stand on their 2 feet. So for me, I was quite blessed because God raised me up quickly. I got a fantastic job, and a lot of people were looking up to me. So the idea that I was going to go into full-time ministry didn't really come at all. So one day I was in the office praying during my lunch break, and I felt the Spirit of God say to me, "It is time to leave this job."
Oh.
And in that meditation, I said, "So where do I go? Do you have another job for me?" Because I thought when I heard that, the idea was there was something else. There was something better somewhere in that context. And And he said, no, it's time to go and serve me full time. And don't forget, by this time, I was already leading a church, but on a part-time basis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I said, okay. The interesting thing was I didn't struggle with it at all. I loved God so much that I was willing to let go anything. Nothing was out of bounds for me to relinquish. I felt it was an honor that I was asked to do it. And so I went straight to my parents to tell them, and they were very upset. Very, very upset with me that, how can I do this? I know my responsibility in the family. If I lose this job, who will look after the family? What will happen? And all of that. I said, don't worry, God will look after us. Oh, my mom said, you're a very wicked boy. You know? I said, don't worry, God is in control and all of that. So, well, long story short, I handed in my resignation and went straight to the church and offered myself a service.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So when did going to Europe come into it then?
Well, going to Europe came 7 years after I went into full-time ministry.
Okay.
Now, actually, my organization wanted to send me initially to go and oversee the church in Malaysia, our church network in Malaysia, because we have churches in Malaysia as well. And I was instrumental in planting the first of our churches in Malaysia.
Wow.
So I was in church once, and some Malaysians came to join us that Sunday morning. And after the service, they came to see me and said to me that they needed us to come into their country to plant a church. So I said, well, your country is quite far. And it will take a lot to send somebody over there and all of that. So they said, if we can organize it and create the structure and provide the facilities required, that they can hold the fort until we find somebody. I said, okay, that's fine. So we mobilized them and we started the process. So when their brother Daniel, a native Malay, went over, registered the church and got a property, and he started the church until my organization now said, okay, maybe you will go and oversee the church there. But at this time, I was very heavily involved in overseeing the youth ministry in my country for my organization. And that was quite a huge movement. Mm-hmm. And so the leader of our organization said, no, he's not going, send somebody else. And that was okay by me because it wasn't as if there was a conviction. I was just going to obey instructions anyway. So a friend of mine, in fact, I was asked to recommend somebody. So I recommended a very dear friend of mine who was a missionary in the north of Nigeria. And he was sent down. He's doing pretty well now. He has planted something like 300 churches since then around Malaysia. So
amazing.
A few years later, my wife had a vision. And the vision was that she saw us in an open field. And I was standing on a platform preaching to people. And when she was sharing this with me, I said, yes, of course. That's what I do all the time. I stand on platforms. I said, no, this is different. The reason why it's different is that the people I saw you preaching to, they were wearing long coats. And the sand they were standing on was white. I said, what's the meaning of white sand? What's the meaning of long coats and all of that? I said, did you see their faces then? He said, no, she couldn't see their faces. She just noticed that they were there wearing long coats and they were standing on white sands. I said, okay, we'll pray some more then. So we prayed. And she went to a crusade with my mom after then. And I wasn't at that crusade. Then this guest speaker that came suddenly took one look at her and said to her, your husband is going on missions. And God asked me to tell you to let him go and support him. He was telling my wife that, and my mom was listening. And he also instructed my wife that when he gets home, when he sees me, he should tell me that this meeting is still continuing for the next 4 days, that I should try and see him. He has a personal message for me. And I said, so my wife came back home, told me about it. I said, no chance, I'm not seeing anybody. No. So I didn't see him, actually. I didn't see him at all. So then I was in the office one day, and the Lord opened my eyes to the globe, this globe-like map thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the globe was spinning right in front of me. It was spinning right in front of me. And I was saying to myself, just stop, stop, stop. And it slowly stopped. And when it stopped, I saw in the top of another map that was facing me, boldly written YORK. And I didn't know what that meant. I don't know anywhere called York except New York. So and immediately I saw that, I came out of that vision. And I said, what's York? What is York? YORK, what's York? And I told my wife about it, and she said, maybe it's New York. Are you going to New York? I said, no, I've heard so many bad stories about New York. I don't want to go there. So I was worried about that, because I knew that this was a message from God that I was going somewhere, but I didn't know where it was. So I started asking from people. But the other thing I noticed is that the map that York was written on top of was the map of the United Kingdom.
Uh-huh.
So I narrowed my search now. So I started asking people. So one day we were having our annual convention in our camp meeting. So we had lots of our missionaries coming in from all over the place. So there is this particular missionary of ours that came in from Sheffield.
Uh-huh.
So I was the one looking after him and his team that came. So I asked him, I said, do you know a place called York in England? Said, oh, yeah. So I'm from Sheffield. York is in North Yorkshire and I'm in South Yorkshire. I said, so somewhere a place called York exists? He said, yeah, it does exist. He said, why are you asking? And I explained to him what I saw. And he said, wow. I said, yes, you have to come to York then. So the other guys in his team said, oh, yes, you have to come to York and all of that. So, okay. He went back to Sheffield. His secretary heard about my intention to come to York to do missions. She was part of a missionary outfit in Sheffield. She announced it there. Somebody came from York to that meeting, heard it, told Dave Crooks about it. Dave Crooks told Michael ask you about it, and Michael asked you, contacted me.
Right. So I need to explain, Michael Askew and Dave Crooks are old friends of ours when we used to live in York, and we were all part of the same church then. So that's amazing. How amazing!
Yeah, wow. Very, very amazing. Scarily amazing, I would say, because of the way the whole thing just tied in. Because it just proves to me that if something is God's will, He ties it together.
Yeah, right.
So that was how I came to York.
Right. So did you go just on a visit to start with, or did you actually move your wife and you moved?
It started with a visit. He started with a visit to the city, and I met Michael on my first visit, and I lived with them. Then I kind of understood the process that I have to go through to get a work visa and all of that. So that wasn't possible immediately. So I had to be doing a lot of visiting trips with my wife, which was quite expensive for us. So
what was your sending organization? They were all part of this process.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they were, because I had to go and ask for a leave of for them to release me to go to York. They were happy with that I can go. My general overseer, who did not want me to go to Malaysia, now say, yeah, you can go to York.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, you can go to York. So eventually, when I discovered that traveling back and forth was quite expensive, I said, okay, you know what I would do? Because I'm a missionary and I want to really understand find a way to connect with the people more and understand what the society is like. And what better avenue can I do that from other than going to a school? So I decided to enroll into studying in the university. So I got admission to study in the UK. Yes, so I got admission to study for an MBA at Teesside University. So that's really exposed me into the country. So I finished that MBA. Then I did another MA in Chester in missional leadership. So that also exposed me to some of the things I didn't know about the country and all of that. So by the time I was finishing my MA in Chester, I was now able to get a work visa to stay as a missionary. So
that was your process of training. Then you didn't have some cross-cultural training per se, but you just exposed yourself.
I just put myself out there and made myself vulnerable.
Rosalind, your wife, was with you throughout all that?
She was with me throughout all the time, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, that was one of my questions. Did you do cross-cultural training? Well, I guess yes and no would be the answer.
Yes.
So in other words, when you first arrived then, was the UK a complete culture shock, or did you sort of just take it in your stride because you were at a university and other internationals were there and all that?
I would say yes, and I would say no, because I'm quite familiar with the United Kingdom. Almost everybody in my family lived in this country.
Okay.
So from birth, I have been told about the United Kingdom. Don't talk about America in my family. Talk about the UK. And all of that. So I was quite aware of that. My dad's friends used to come in December to Nigeria to visit with us, and they stay with us. So I knew quite a number of them that came. So I was quite comfortable with the UK. Interestingly, where I had the shock was in the church.
How?
The society did not shock me at all. I was quite familiar. I knew what to expect, but the church shocked me.
In what way?
It wasn't what I was expecting.
Unfriendly, was it?
Very unfriendly.
Wow.
And it wasn't what I was expecting at all. I remember telling a friend of mine in Nigeria that I was going on missions to the UK. And he said, "No, you can't go on missions to the UK." I said, "Why?" He said, "That's a Christian country, and we call the United Kingdom because most missionaries that came to Nigeria came from here. The UK, that's Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and England. So we call this place God's headquarters."
Not so much. Not anymore.
That's what we call this place. So it was quite shocking for me. It took me some time to recover from this shock. The church wasn't friendly. The church wasn't welcoming. Some of the doctrines were quite strange. There was no passion. There was I couldn't see anything visible that has to do with soul winning. Evangelism was almost non-existent.
Right.
And people were very comfortable. I come from a society where you can be comfortable with a church of 10 people or 20 people or 100 people. The idea is that when whatever number you have in the church, 80% of them has to be disciples, to be workers who are ready to be sent, who are ready to go. So that's why most of our churches are not mega churches. They grow big, but they are cut in half. So the half goes somewhere else to plant another church, do mission somewhere else. So that's how the organization grew. So it was quite interesting for me to see what I saw. And that shook me. It really shook me. But I enjoyed my time speaking to ordinary people, local people who didn't believe in God at all, who were quite receptive. I remember speaking to a lady who was driving a taxi, and she was asking me what I was doing. I told her I was a missionary. I said, okay, you're one of the good ones then. I said, maybe. I don't know about that. And she started telling me the story of a son, a teenage son, who is quite rebellious and who did all manner of things, that he's off to Czechoslovakia or somewhere, Czech Republic, with his girlfriend. I said, he's a teenager. I said, he has a girlfriend. I said, yeah, gone without yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So, and she, at the end of the ride, she told me, can I call you to come and have a word with him when he gets back? So that's the kind of reception I got from the local population. And God was sending a message to me. That's where I'm sending you to. Those are the people I wanted to reach.
Yes.
You know, so, but again, because the city I was sent to is the church community is quite closely, it's quite knitted, quite closely knitted. So although I want to do this, but then I can't do that effectively if I'm not received by the church. You see what I'm saying? So I had to do a lot of waiting and praying and building bridges and building relationship, trying to make people not to be too scared of my presence.
So at this time, you were still in Teesside, or
I was still in Teesside. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
when did you get to York then?
No. I've always lived in York. I didn't move out of York.
Oh, okay.
So I always commute to Teesside for my lectures and back. I never, even when I was in Chester, I never left York. I'd always lived in York.
Okay.
York is the only city I've lived in since I came.
All right. So my question was going to be, what was your biggest challenge? I would say probably you've already answered that, the reception in the church. But then what was the biggest blessing? Maybe the reception with people outside, or how would you answer that?
Well, I would say my biggest blessing was to see the hunger of people outside. You know, when Jesus says, lift up your eyes and look and see the harvest. And there is nothing as precious to a missionary as recognizing that the harvest is white and the harvest is ready. I could see that. And that made me very, very enthusiastic. It helped me to close my eyes to every other thing that is happening around me. You know, so that was my biggest blessing, to see that there are lots of people who are willing to listen to the gospel, to hear me speak to them, and all of that. And to be honest, I was sharing this in church the other day. I've never really had anybody say no to me if I say I wanted to tell them about Jesus since I arrived.
Probably would to fellow Yorkians, but they're very open to you coming from outside, I guess.
But that can be that is a possibility. The only people that tells me how difficult it is to witness are church people.
Interesting.
You know, in fact, when I remember speaking to a man once, and trust me, my messages are not. They are very straight. I'm more like a Yorkshire man. We say things as it is. So my messages are quite straight. I remember speaking to a man once in the center of town, and he told me that I need to speak to his wife as well. And this was a man that never believed in God. You know, so and when church people tell me that, no, you can't do this and you can't do that, but the people are ready. So I started asking the question, so how do you know you can't? And I discovered there were lots of assumptions. One person went out, or two people went out once, and somebody was hostile to them, and they concluded. that the 200,000 people in Europe don't want to listen. That's not true. That's not true. A lot of people want to hear. It's good news anyway. So a lot of people want to hear good news. You see, and the thing is that I think most times people tend to put the cart before the horse. You know, people, I can understand the desire to want people saved, but people cannot be saved until they hear the gospel. My job is not to save them. My job is to share the gospel with them. That is all I've been called to do. God does the saving. So let me plant the seed and leave them alone. You know, and it has been very, very interesting.
I remember you sharing with Ross and me the story of how you began to get to know your neighbors. So I'm wondering if you could, well, in two different places, you had a different strategy. So,
the first one was when we moved into Poppleton. So at Poppleton is a very posh area of York, if you want to call it that. And I just discovered that all my neighbors are invisible. I know their cars, but I don't know them by face. So you can just see all these cars parked on the driveway, but you don't. Are they automatic cars? Do they drive themselves? You can't really say. So one Easter period, I just felt a sense that, okay, perhaps what I would do is to go into Tesco and get some Easter cards, greeting cards for all my neighbors. So I went around the estate and I counted all the houses there. And I went into Tesco to buy cards for everybody. I didn't know their names, I didn't know who they were, but I know the number of the houses. So I started numbering the cards. This is from Reuben and Rosalind at number 10. That was all I did. I put our names there to you guys in number 5. You know, so I just left it at that. And I shared it one night when everybody had gone to bed. Yeah, that was when I went around the estate and shared the cards. By afternoon the next day, we had loads of cards in our house. And I thought, oh, maybe they now, everybody's upset. They've now sent our cards back. But when we started opening, it was like a reciprocal card. Yeah. They went off, bought Easter cards and sent back to us and now put their names on it. You know, so that was how I got to know them. And it was an amazing relationship we had with our neighbors in that estate. They knew who we were, they knew what we did, and they were comfortable with it. And they wanted to be friends with us. You know, there was a lady who just had a very, very nasty separation with her husband. And she was in a very bad state. She just remembered that we were missionaries and we were pastors. And one day she just came to our house and said she needed to talk to somebody. And she started telling me about our situation and all of that. And she doesn't believe in God. But at that desperate moment of her life, she needed to talk to somebody who could give her some perspective. You know, and she came to me. So if I did not obey God in putting myself forward, perhaps she wouldn't have had that opportunity to come and talk to me. Then we had my next door neighbor's testimony, quite interesting. We're coming back from church one Sunday afternoon, and I met him in front of his house, mowing the lawn. And I said hello to him, and I asked, so how's your wife then? And he was scandalized. I don't have a wife. I don't have a... What about this person in your house? Who is she? She's not my wife. She's my partner. I said, oh, okay. But you have a son together. I said, yeah. I said, so why are you not married then? I said, it's too risky. I don't want to marry. Then I said to him, you know what? You're not really going to be doing anything different if you get married. You're just going to cement your commitment to one another. And he said, really? I said, yeah. Nothing will change. still the same person, you still live in the same house, you still have the same son, but you will now cement your commitments to each other. That's all. So, okay. It's very interesting. And he went away, and I went away. About 5 months later, both himself and his partner came to knock on our door to announce to me that they were getting married. And I didn't know that the guy's parents were Christians. They were from Northern Ireland. So his parents were Christian. They too came around during the wedding, and they came to say thank you. It's quite interesting, because after we had that conversation, I now signposted them to the local church, to the local Anglican church in our area there. I introduced them to the vicar, and he took them in. They had their wedding there. I was at the wedding. It's just quite interesting, and we felt very fulfilled in that estate before we moved. Now, where we live now, the same thing happened. We didn't know our neighbors.
They didn't know each other probably either.
No, they didn't. So I said, okay, what do I do here now? Because we've had so much success in the last place. I couldn't do the same thing. I had to pray. So I prayed. One morning, the bean guys came to collect the beans. And I saw, how they do. They collect the beans and they just leave it lying everywhere. And my eyes were open to how scattered beans were on the streets. So I decided I was going to take the beans back to all the houses. So every time they come, I would take the bean back. And that was how they got to know me.
Right.
So I was the guy that put the bean backs to the driveways of people, and we are enjoying our time on that street. People are not as bad as people say they are. People are only scared.
Yeah.
And they just need somebody to come and tell them that there is no reason to be scared. And it has been quite interesting. It is my prayer that Christians, those who believe in Jesus, will be visible. We can't be hiding like everybody else. We can't just lock our doors like everybody else. Jesus said we are a city set on top of a hill that cannot be hid. So all we're trying to do is to be out there, and be visible, just in case anybody needs us.
Yeah, it's lovely. So one other story I remember was about how you got your twins, because when you first came to England, you didn't have children. So tell us that story.
Well, it's a very interesting one, because when we got married, we were very, very excited about having children. But unfortunately, my wife suffered quite a few miscarriages during the first and the second year of our marriage, and that was a very trying time for us. And as it's my practice, if I don't understand things, I always want to ask God why. So I went into a season of prayer and fasting, just to be able to connect with God and say, why are all these things happening to me? And God spoke to me with very clear words. You can't give yourself children. I will give you children. Face my job, and I will do it when I want. So that killed every anxiety in me. That killed every anxiety in my wife. And we never talked about it again. So we're just busy planting churches, doing our job, going on wherever we are sent, and even praying for people who were barren, and they were receiving miracles. Yeah, we did that a lot. We did that for about a year. Yeah, So when we arrived here, we didn't have children, and I suppose that was God's way of saying, I'm sending you guys out. You need to travel light. You don't need the baggage.
It's a lot of baggage with kids, that's for sure.
And to be honest, with hindsight, they say hindsight is a good thing. With hindsight, I think God was right. Because could you imagine if we were traveling with children back and forth into the UK when we came in? It was expensive for both of us. It would have been even more expensive with children as well. But about 5-6 years ago, myself and my wife were praying. We were praying in one of our devotions. And we felt the Lord said to us, it was time. It was time. But we didn't know how that would work. We've never gone to do any medical check. We've never done anything like that. We're just waiting, So I rang Michael up. Michael asked me, and I said to him, we feel God wants us to, it is time to have children. I said, okay, so what can I do? I said, well, pray. Pray into that. And the other thing we would like to do is to go and have some kind of medical checkup to see if we are okay. And he said, yeah, that would be a good idea. So we went off for this medical checkup and we were told that my wife couldn't conceive.
Wow.
That she couldn't conceive, that she wasn't producing enough eggs, so that can't happen. And we were in a better state before that examination. So after the exam, we were now properly broken. But again, we realized that God said it was time. So we went back to pray and we felt God saying to us, who counted the eggs? So we left it at that and continued praying. So one afternoon, Michael came to our house and I was the only one at home on that day. And he said, I was praying today and God asked me to come and pray for you to have a child. I said, no, sorry, children. I said, okay. So I knelt down before him and he prayed and left. So after he left, a few weeks later, my dad took ill in Nigeria and my sibling said he was going to die. That I should come home quickly. So I took my wife along, we went. So we were with him, we looked after him, and thank God he did not die, still with us till now. So we came back home to York, and my wife fell sick. She became very, very sick. And I thought probably she's contracted malaria. So went to the hospital and they did some tests. And the doctor said, are you pregnant? And she said, no. And I said, no. I said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm very sure. She's not pregnant. And my wife said, I'm not pregnant. I said, okay, just to be sure, we'll send you to the early pregnancy unit. Let them do a test and let's rule that out. And we went there together and it was confirmed that she was pregnant.
How amazing.
I said, all right. I wasn't still sure. And I said, how did you know? I said, they did urine test and all of that. I said, well, that's not very reliable, is it? From what I heard. Can't you just do an ultrasound? I said, no, it's too early and all of that. I said, but how are we really sure about this? So the guy was very gracious and sent us away for an ultrasound. And the ultrasound completely messed me up. When we got there, the sonographer did everything and came back and said, well, congratulations. So there are 2 sacs in the womb. I said, 2 sacs? What does that mean? Does it mean that there's a growth there? Is it cancer? What is it? No. 2 sacs. You're going to have twins. Twins!
Amazing.
So she had to stop work immediately and just stayed at home until the children came.
Oh, wonderful. I bet Michael was absolutely thrilled to bits.
It was his fault. It was his fault.
I think God had already said it was time.
Yeah.
Okay, so our time is nearly up, but I just wanted to ask about the sending organization that you're part of. How do you stay in touch with them? Do they continue to send people to the UK? And what is their reason for existing?
Okay, my sending organization is called the Redeemed Christian Church of God. Now, it was founded about 70 years ago in Nigeria by an uneducated man.
Uneducated man, okay.
Uneducated. He was an illiterate. He couldn't even write his name.
Wow.
You know, but he was part of a church, a traditional African church. It was the traditional African church then was kind of a confluence between the idea of church and the local traditional spiritual practices. So he was part of this. And God called him out of that church and told him, Jesus appeared to him and told him that what he was doing was wrong, that they were not worshiping him, that he wanted him to worship him and tell others to worship him. So he went away and God gave him grace to become an intercessor. So he prayed earnestly and God told him he was going to plant a church and gave him the name of the church. And God showed him a picture of the name and he started to scribble the picture down. This was a man that couldn't read or write. Tried to scribble the letters in the picture down. And when he finished scribbling them down, he looked for somebody, a young boy who was in school, and asked him, what did this say? He says, the Redeemed Christian Church of God. So that was how the name came about. It's quite a mouthful, but that was how it came about. And nobody could change it because it was divinely inspired. So he started preaching from town to town about the saving grace of Jesus Christ. Many people came to faith. He was very, very engraced by God to really do things supernaturally. Many sick people were healed. Many people were raised from the dead. A lot of witch doctors became Christians in his time. Very, very humble but powerful man of God. And that was how the church started. But the church did not become globally missional not until after he passed on and the new leader stepped in. The new leader, by contrast, is a university professor.
Wow.
He's a university professor. He was the youngest professor in the country at the time. Very, very unbelieving. But gave his life to Jesus in the church that the founder was the leader. So, and when he walked in, the founder said that God told him that's the man that was going to take over from him.
Wow.
So, and that's the man that is going to take the church to the ends of the earth. So when he became the leader, the church became very missional. So our missions enterprise started in Africa. We call it the African Invasion Project. And we properly invaded Africa. Properly. Invaded Africa with the gospel. And today, the church has expressions in 198 countries in the world. 198, yeah, countries in the world. And
that's amazing. Wow.
That's quite something. And it's quite a global miracle, I would say, because nothing like that can come out of where I come from, but God did it. So we our mission in Europe is more of a calling than what you just do to spread. In fact, our international headquarters is in London.
Really?
Yeah. Our current passion is to reach the east of Europe. We just finished a crusade in Netherlands, in Slovakia, and in Ireland. The one in Slovakia was quite something. An entire Bratislava shut down that Sunday afternoon. The entire city was shut down. We could see what God was doing, and the organization is investing a lot in Europe now and sending more people out with the gospel here. So we believe that Europe will be revived in our lifetime.
Oh, wow. Amen.
We believe that strongly. It's quite interesting because the people here don't believe it. The Christians here don't believe it, but we believe it strongly. And that can be seen in the level of investment that is going into Europe right now.
Because a few months ago, well, probably more than a year ago now, I interviewed a guy from Burundi called Onesifo Manirakiza, who shares that same passion for what I suppose is commonly called reverse mission, which is going back to the countries where the gospel first originally went to Africa from. And you said that most of the missionaries who went to Nigeria came from the UK. But I think that, people talk a lot now about reverse missions, but it sounds like your sending organization is more in just following the Great Commission, obeying the Great Commission, going out anywhere that God leads. But are there some like yourself who would still have that sense of more Europe than anywhere, or more America maybe?
Well, I think the term reverse missionary in itself is not a layer of missions. It's more of a label you give to anybody that comes to a place where a missionary came from, brought the gospel to where it's coming from, kind of thing. So I think the Great Commission is the motivating factor. I said in our church recently that our church is not a sitting capacity church; it's a sending capacity church. So what we are raising here are people who will go. We want to raise people who, when they are sleeping at night, their dream, the only thing they will be hearing in their dream is go, 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 go. Because we need soldiers on the field just now. So I think the Great Commission is what motivates us rather than the reverse missionary concept. People call me a reverse missionary, but they call me that because of where I came from and how missionaries from here brought the gospel to us. My headmaster in primary school was from Scotland. Right. I went to an Anglican primary school in Nigeria, and it was very, very British. We caught our teeth with church from there. We learned discipline from there. Our idea of Christianity is discipline. We must be disciplined. That was our idea of Christianity. You come to school early. You pray before you start your work. You pray at assemblies. You sing songs of praise. You must have all those things to come to school. That was how we were brought up. So part of the shock was coming here and seeing none of that happening. It was quite shocking. So we know that God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And a lot of people have come out of these shows that diligently sought the Lord and gave their life for the gospel. And God will reward that. So what we are seeing in Europe today with people coming in from Africa, missionaries coming in from Africa, and to be honest, other parts of the world, is God remembering the labors of our heroes past.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Reuben. Thank you for taking the time to share with us.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, it's given us an awful lot of food for thought.
Yeah. It is an amazing thing. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to be called to do missions.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've met people who are scared about it,
Mm-hmm.
but there is nothing scary about abandoning yourself in the hands of God. When I carry my children, when I carry them, they feel safe. They feel peace. You can see the way they grab me and they're comfortable in my hands. That's the way we're supposed to feel when we're in the hands of God.
That's right. Amazing.
Yeah, and every missionary, when you go out, God is just carrying you. You feel His warmth, you feel His comfort, you feel His presence and His security. So there's nothing to fear. It's nothing to fear.
Okay. Lovely note to finish on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for having me.
So that's it for now. Thanks so much for joining us. And please do go and see all the other interviews, listen to this one, share it with other people, like us on Facebook. Just let lots of people know that FieldPartner is there, and we're there to help people who are wanting to cross into other cultures, exactly as Reuben has been saying. So bye-bye for now then, and God bless.